Welcome everybody. It's a beautiful Wednesday, May 27th, 2020. I'm Chris Paff. I'm the moderator for today's webinar, which is AI for Video, Scaling Deep Learning for the Multi-Channel Universe. With me are the hosts today, the CEO and founder of Envision.ai, Mr. Thomas Jelinek. Also, Dr. Eric Pettijohn, who's the Principal Systems Engineer for Video CV.ai for AT&T Mobility. And also Bryce Hunter, who is the Senior Vice President of Digital at Boat Rocker Media. We're going to be talking today about AI solutions, how they're integrated for video, how to generate useful analytics and metadata, and also simplify and efficiently optimize your existing workflows. Envision.ai yesterday announced that it has introduced the first version of what it calls VideoViews, which is a cloud-based product which enables video professionals to conduct automatic discovery of topics and information in video content. It uses patented technologies from Envision.ai, such as speech detection, facial tracking, video scene understanding, to explore topics in video through deep learning, enabling automatic curation and automatic editing of video. And so we're going to have a presentation from Thomas Jelinek, and then we're going to dive into some discussions, and we'll take your questions as well. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Thomas.
Thank you so much. So at Envision AI, we're based in Montreal, Canada, and for the past 3 or 4 years, we've been applying artificial intelligence to image and video content, especially with respect to how to rank, predict, boost its reach on social media. So for example, we developed Best Tag AI, which is about attaching metadata to content to boost engagement. And with VideoViews, we're applying artificial intelligence to generate dense metadata to understand video. And we're very excited to introduce it. And so here's an introductory video to show, in general, what VideoViews is all about. Envision AI has developed proprietary technologies in AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to build accessible products that are used for visual content creation, analysis, and promotion. Tools that automate the delivery of optimal image or video clips to achieve the highest audience engagement on social media. Our latest product is VideoViews, artificial intelligence to simplify the creation, editing, sharing of video, and simplify all these within an online cloud-based production workflow. This is achieved by dense multimodal labeling. Labeling all the features from the ground up without any prior information that can be used for both discovery and exploration of video. This automatizes curation and video editing. Editing becomes as simple as selecting components for logical expressions, akin to creating visual features of the video and building them like Lego blocks. What do we mean by dense multimodal labeling? Without any prior assumptions about the video and from the ground up, we describe everything that occurs within the video at a frame-by-frame rate. So for example, we find all the faces in the video and we cluster those faces that look similar. And then we can say that that is what a character looks like. Similarly, we can do the same thing for voices. We find all the different voices, cluster them together, we can say that is one person's voice. Within the face, we can do action recognition to see when their lips are moving. And so when their lips are moving, we can match that to the sound of someone's voice, and we can say that is what that person sounds like. Speech to text recognition then allows us to take that person, that character, and then determine what their transcript is. We can also do other things like look at their emotional inference and also look at tracking of different objects. This allows us to do automatic curation and video editing. Once the video is processed, we then will be able to see everything that occurs within the video, the different characters, what they're doing, who are they talking to, and then the user can then interact with the video to then create video clips. Thus we see, for example, here what the VideoViews experience looks like. The first page is a summary page, which will break down the video into its different characters, tell you how many times they occur within, how many clips they occur within the screen, how many minutes of screen time they have, how many minutes of speech time they have, who are they talking to, who are they interacting with, the topics of conversation, locations where they're discussing, organizations, key phrases that they use, etc. Once that is determined, then the user can then interact with the video through various queries. These queries are, again, logical expressions that people can then interact with the video. So for example, you could say, I want to show me those video clips where Ray is talking to Mickey. Mickey is not saying anything, but is looking unhappy, and they're in a restaurant. Then these video clips will be then presented. You can then save them and then use them to build up sub-stories within the video. Thus, with video views, we have artificial intelligence, which can automate video intelligence for producers to deliver library content more accurately and more rapidly. Remote production and post-production can be aided with AI tools that automatically label characters, objects, emotions, and actions, as well as text and sounds to create automatic building blocks for rapid edits. Envision AI is an AI solution built for scale in the video market. Remote producers can deploy video views across channels rapidly, and the interface is elegant and simple so that anybody can use it. For example, a use case of video views is to create multiple video edits for sharing on social media platforms. Multiple edits can be created for each social media platform using logline templates, and then optimized for each platform. So for example, TikTok is a maximum of 15 seconds, Instagram should be around 20 seconds, Facebook 30 seconds, etc. Because the creation of video edits is so simple, multiple edits can then be generated and then deployed across various social media platforms. KPIs can be measured, and then we can easily determine which video edit would work best.
As well, there are applications for video redaction, anonymization for legal compliance purposes. Because all the video features are labeled with a single click, one can select a character, voice, text, or any user-defined object in the video, say a logo, to be masked or removed from the video everywhere. This is especially useful for governments that must quickly respond to access to information requests, and this replaces a process that is currently manual.
Now we're going to go through the website that is VideoViews and explain what the VideoViews experience is like. Here we have a number of videos that we have uploaded. Choose one, and this to demonstrate the summary page. Here we see all the characters, their screen presence, their amount of speech they had, the emotions that they had throughout the whole video. We see speech highlights like locations where they located, names of people, key phrases, and a word cloud of speech that occurs. We can click on each character, look at the co-occurrence of screen time, speech time, and then the combinations of emotions again. Key phrases, and again, a word cloud of the topics and keywords that they used. So we see for Michael, he was present mostly with Dwight, and Dwight had the most negative emotions. And then keywords are, for example, cage was the most prominent word that was determined. And we can go through the different characters. This is an idea to give you a general feeling of who is occurring, what is happening, without any prior information about what the video is like. With queries, you can then create clips. So for example, you can say, when does Dwight say the word smile? You launch a query, and then this will give you the clips. Similarly, you can go back and say, when is Dwight face posture looking left, and when is Jim looking right, to see if they're facing each other. You can launch the query, and automatically you can get to the point in the video where this is occurring. These clips will then be used to create different edits that can then be pieced together to create new trailers or teasers for social media.
Show an example of a use case where someone creates video edits that can be used for sharing on social media platforms. The query aspect of video views will be used in terms of logical expressions to create pieces of video which can then be analogous to elements of a video logline or abrégé de film. And we would show how those elements can be mapped to video logline components. So for example, from the summary view, we see that Dwight is the most negative person in the video. So we can then use them as an antagonist. Jim is the most positive emotion, so we'll call him a protagonist. But we also see that Michael is the one with the most speech, so we're going to use him for an event for talking. We also see, for example, down here in the total word cloud that, for example, cage and transfer are both important words that were discussed. So if we go to queries, we can look at Dwight, emotion negative, create this query, and then we see here's the component.
I never smile if I can help it. Showing one's teeth is a submission signal in primates. When someone smiles at me, all I see is a chimpanzee begging for its life.
And we can use that for the description of the antagonist. For the protagonist, we're going to go to Jim, emotion positive, launch query, and then we see a number of video edits where he
Every time I typed my name.
And one of these we can use for the trailer. We can also use Dwight negative and Michael negative as an inciting incident in the trailer.
No! 4 years of malfeasance unreported. This
Okay,
stand.
calm down.
No, you calm down.
And then finally, for an outlier event, we'll get Michael saying the word cage, which we saw from the summary is an important term.
Cage match. Cage matches? Yeah, they work. How could they not work? If they didn't work, everybody would still be in the cage.
So here we see how we composed the various elements of the log line to create the trailer, and here's the final result. I never smile if I can help it.
Showing one's teeth is a submission signal in primates. When someone smiles at me, all I see is a chimpanzee begging for its life.
One of us is out of here by the end of today.
Cage match. Cage matches? Yeah, they work. How could they not work? If they didn't work, everybody would still be in the cage.
Why don't we dive into our discussion? So, you know, one of the things that we've talked about is what networks will need to do to accommodate video AI to enable more intelligent delivery of content. Eric, talk about your thoughts on the quality of experience for networks, particularly mobile networks with video AI.
Well, one of my focuses in AT&T is efficient delivery of video, especially over the top. streaming video, but part of that equation is how the video is produced, and being able to annotate, what parts of the video contain critical information, so that the faces, for example, don't get blurred out unnecessarily. So we do subjective tests with large groups of people to figure out how they feel about watching video on the mobile screen. It's also interesting to look at the video ingest process, especially in a remote location where you might need a 5G network to deliver the dailies to the studio, or maybe even doing the editing remotely. We're seeing more and more calibrated cameras, depth cameras, and kind of real-time labeling and annotation of data that can feed right into the kind of process that Thomas is talking about. So it's very exciting times. The sensors are fantastic. The cameras are fantastic. We're shooting in 4K, 8K, 360 video, so you can derive both linear content and what's being called VR 360 video experiences, immersive experiences from all of this video that's being collected. But at the end of the day, though, it's about the editor's choice, the producer, director, getting their vision out to the people telling the story. I don't know if we're going to replace those people with AI anytime soon, but the data they have to work with and tools they have to work with are getting more and more wonderful all the time. And I think we do need to remain efficient in our use of the network, so we don't frustrate the users and kind of abuse our mobile network unnecessarily. So kind of continue to pay attention to compression efficiency, when to put things in the cloud, when to make it local, so forth.
Exactly. And speaking of efficiency, Bryce, what are the prime considerations for you as a producer when using AI, and what levels of efficiencies do you actually derive from using AI?
Yeah, so we are largely focused on data-informed decisions that we can pull off of use case. And so if we see users we average about 10 million views a day on our content across multiple platforms. We try and aggregate that information. We try and then use that to help inform the creative going forward, which it just accelerates that process. We've had entire seasons of television adapt to accommodate for what the audience is interested in, and we wouldn't have been able to do that without that type of large-scale data analysis and support from an artificial intelligence solution, either in-house or from partners. So from that all the way through to, as Eric mentioned, tracking assets as they're being produced, making sure that everything's being labeled correctly is a massive win for us, all the way through to actually clearances and tracking licenses for music, and doing that over time when it gets lost usually, or data gets just kind of shifted into places that people aren't usually tracking as efficiently. And then finally through to the delivery process, actually leveraging AI and artificial intelligence solutions for in our case, a lot of machine learning that takes in, adapts assets that we have masters of and spits them out into formats that are ready for broadcast.
Is this an issue now in the time of COVID-19, where you're looking more at, let's say, your deep catalog for content? And, again, I mean, you were also working remotely. So those are issues both for the producer as much as for the network as well. But why don't you take on the COVID-19 question first, Bryce?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're seeing a greater than ever demand for shows that we haven't even looked at in years. There was actually
Name one.
recent. Well, I can actually. There's a Canadian, lovely little Canadian puppet show called Land O' Hands. It's incredibly Land O' Hands. It's a little bit terrifying if anyone goes to look it up. But it's a real
nothing like a terrifying puppet show for
yeah, for children,
yeah.
And it was one of those shows that the team actually had an ongoing bet, like, who's actually gonna be able to sell this show? And with this with a lack of the ability to get productions on their feet outside of animation productions, the live action assets that live in our back catalog are now just popping up as far as high quality, interesting, exciting opportunities. And we're exploring tons of solutions, both with Thomas and others, with how do we take and ingest assets that might still be living on tape, or might still be living in different formats or forms that we're not really sure what the rights profiles are on them, or we're not really sure what the quality initial assets are. So sourcing those, doing AQC against them, ingesting them, tagging them, and getting them prepped for deployment to broadcasters and OTT platforms that are interested in buying today, buying yesterday.
Right.
All those things are deeply interesting. Plus, taking those assets that we do have produced and chopping them down to more manageable sizes for different audiences, as Thomas mentioned, TikTok and other platforms. they all require a different tuning, so to speak, for the audience. And you know, we're doing a lot of that
Right, and
manually.
that's all. I mean, that's the contextual issues we now have to face. I mean, more than ever, particularly you know, since we're not going back on set or on
Absolutely.
location anytime soon. Hopefully, within the
Hmm.
next 4 weeks. So, Thomas, talk about dense or automatic multimodal labeling. What is it, and why should the AI universe care about it?
Well, really, it's about, one of the things that makes video so compelling is because, there's so many modalities to it. It's visual, it's auditory, there's so many things going on. And if you really want to understand what's happening in video, then you really have to be able to look at all these different components of it, understand what's going on, and also the challenge is to link them all together. So to link a person's voice to their face, link different people together, and then you start understanding the contextual. I mean, if two people are talking, then that's part of the context of what's going on within the video. And so building this up, being able to generate metadata on all these different components of the video, of all these different features, and then link them together to be able to contextualize it is really what's important if you really want to be able to generate the necessary metadata if you want to share it or understand it, or, let's say, edit or generate revenue from it.
Yeah, and you know, I wanted to get back to something, Eric, that you talked about earlier, because I think it's really interesting when we talk about where we're going, not just this year, but of course in the next couple of years. I think we're starting to hear more from some of the big vendors in the broadcast space who are looking at something that you mentioned about 360, and particularly live 360 and various versions of immersive and VR. How close are we to real-time video AI understanding, you know, through the network?
Well, there are implementations of real-time video analysis systems today. You know, before I joined DirecTV in 2014, I worked for Live Clips, and we were doing real-time computer vision of NFL sports for the purpose of clipping the games, and we were able to do camera tracking and so forth in real time on
Yeah.
Linux platform. Linux servers all in software with some GPU acceleration. So we're here today. It's really a matter of what the users want. You know, can we deliver the 360 video user experience in a way that doesn't make people sick, for example? You know, there are issues around that, and then we have the headset, VR, AR headset world. But I think we're going to learn from that world, especially the AR world, that annotating video, the annotation content itself is something that consumers are interested in. Of course, that's very clear for sports and news, but even for you know, storytelling, I think having annotation presented properly to the user and, you know, delivering some interactive experience, even if it's just on their phone, not necessarily on a headset, you know,
Yeah.
that's something that should start to emerge, because all of our smartphones are just wonderful graphic devices that
We've
can
been
do
shooting
everything.
4K on our iPhones for a couple of
Yeah,
years now.
it's totally underutilized so far. It's going to be very interesting to see how people take advantage of that. Of course, it's a lot about standards. In order to have interoperability between the assets, you've got to have standards, metadata standards, and so forth. You can't have vendors owning the whole space themselves. That's not going to fly. So there has to be cooperation between the vendors in order for big companies like
Do you
AT&T
see that
to.
happening?
Well, yeah, you know, I get involved in the ITU and ISO standards ongoingly, and it is happening. Adoption's another question. You know, patents are always a
Right.
barrier in some
Yeah.
cases. But, you know, we just launched, AT&T Warner Media launched HBO Max today, in spite of
Yes.
the
Congratulations.
difficulties with the lockdown. Yeah, so check it out. It's all
All the Harry
subscription-based
Potter movies
VOD.
are in there.
Yep, no
Yep.
ads so far. So we are experimenting with all kinds of immersive media right now within AT&T, and we're going to deliver things when it makes sense from a consumer standpoint, but we are, you know, doing that kind of development and in several parts of the company right now.
Yeah. Before I ask Bryce another question, Eric, I want to stay on you for a second. You have done an enormous amount of work, and for many years have been well recognized for your innovations in facial animation, motion capture, the technology behind that. So where do you see video AI today in terms of that technology? How far have we come, and do we still need to do things that would make that more efficient?
Well, we're better and better in a CGI context to, using virtual humans in production. Some actor died, want to reproduce a few seconds of a scene. That's there. We're not quite there in terms of staying out of uncanny valley in real time, but again, our devices, iPhone 10 and above, depth sensing cameras, face tracking, it is getting there. In that context, I'm more focused on commercial collaboration aspects, using an avatar to collaborate with others, because I think there's real utility in that. But I think we'll see more and more, hybrid synthetic natural content being delivered to consumers, especially if this damn virus continues to keep people from working together personally. We may see that driving some production processes, because content needs to be created.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're seeing a boon in animated content being produced now, because that obviously doesn't require people to be interacting with each other. Virtual sets, so that you don't have to shoot people at the same time. That's happening as well.
Yeah, and Bryce, so talk about animation, because I know you guys get into that a little bit. I mean, is that something that you're looking to stock up on more, and how is AI going to help you in that endeavor?
Yeah, absolutely. So we run 3 animation studios right now, both in Toronto, Ottawa, and out in Nova Scotia. And so the beauty of animation obviously has allowed us to just keep production rolling. And in fact, it's been booming for us, as Eric mentioned. It's been a really exciting time for those teams to be able to produce content and supply, entertainment.
It's a challenge, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's been really, really lovely. So what we've experienced for AI inside of those teams is, where and when we can accommodate for it inside of our pipelines, we're building in tools all over the place. Everything from rendering acceleration, and it's more like deep and complex forms. That's actually something that one of my teams is working on, and then all the way through to more systematized approaches to populating environments. So background art, background animation, additional elements being just thrown in generative assets. That's been really, really fun and really interesting to see those deployed into the environmental artists world. We're starting to borrow some more notes and hints from the video game space as well. We're doing pass-through animations, so we can go from pose to pose, or shot to shot, or animated sequence to animated sequence, with a lot more natural fluidity that's based on ML. But a lot of those things, to be totally transparent, are still in early days. But one of those things that it's awesome to be able to have technical development team at those questions, focus on those questions and deploying solutions into actual animation environments on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah, no, I look forward to where that's going to go. And so, Thomas, talk about engagement, because of course this is a really, really key issue, not just in terms of what you've developed, but for the industry overall. And of course you've previously released products like Best Picks and Best Clip and Best Tag that have seen some huge boosts in user engagement. Talk about the science of that, and particularly where you're going with VideoViews in terms of user engagement with AI.
Right. So we've developed a number of products that can look at different aspects of images, video, to try and predict engagement. So we build like ranking type models. So if you have like a series of videos, it can predict which ones can generate the most engagement on social media. You can also find, for example, short clips, or like a preview clip of 3 seconds, or a thumbnail for sharing on social media. And then we've also developed tools for specific social media platforms that can boost the engagement by attaching metadata to it. And so that was actually one of the things that we're looking at with VideoViews, is to look at the attachment of metadata to video clips, and then also how to generate, let's say, trailers that you might, or logline type trailers that can be then shared on different social media platforms that can then maximize the engagement. The other thing that can be also very interesting there is that one of the things with video views is because it's so simple to create multiple trailers, let's say for sharing on each platform, you then can very quickly measure the KPIs associated with that engagement, and then you see what type of videos are working and what is not working. And that process, as it continues interactively with social media from your content, can then provide insight into the content itself. So to find out what is really working with your content, what are people focused on, and perhaps how to better extract value from that content that you have.
Well, that gets also into the question of like monetizing that content, because of course, and Bryce touched on this, a couple of times here. We're now in a period where the quote unquote streaming wars, which we were all talking about last year, and as Eric noted, today is the launch of HBO Max, and soon we'll have Peacock. And for all the Office fans who saw Thomas's demo, I don't know if we're going to see a reunion of The Office, but you can play around with video views and do things with Jim and Michael. But seriously, the monetization of content, I would think, is going to hit a new plateau, particularly with creative integrations with social media or whatever the next OTT platform is. It might even be something that's literally more or less on demand from 5G. I want to ask Eric about something about cloud, but talk about monetization, because of course you've been involved in this, Thomas, for a couple of years now, and I think the optimization of video using your tools, just plays right into the wheelhouse for that particular endeavor.
That's a question for me?
Yeah, all you. Or
yeah, so yeah, it's certainly the idea of being able to remix your content, and by remixing it, sort of generate new content that can then be shared, and also extracting insights into the content that you already have, are ways that one can extract hopefully new revenue streams, which is very important for a lot of these content creators.
Yeah, and Bryce, why don't you talk about that as well? Because of course, this is something that you're doing every day, and you're right in the midst of this interesting shift that we're all going through in terms of delivering content in ways that are off premises, shall we say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's been, my team actually has been kind of, very much square in the middle of this, stuck right in the middle of this thing, which has been really fun to see both the incredible surge in viewership online as we track all viewership sources to the best of our ability. Obviously, social media platforms being the easiest one for us to draw data in from at any given time. And we've been talking with Thomas for quite some time about deploying tool sets that he's built out for this express purpose, which is to take these nascent assets that are sitting either in full form or sitting, quite frankly, on a shelf somewhere, and parse them down to really tight, new formatted, highly tuned to the platform pieces of content that we can start to monetize. We're doing that right now through a lot of human effort and power, and this is why we're really excited to play around with more with video views and a few other tools like that, where we can actually just take these assets, process them down, extract highest value components, and then just, quite frankly, start to validate that through A/B testing, which is just a baseline operation that we do for all of our assets. Every thumbnail, every title, every description, every keyword that goes out on our content is always put through a multi-phase, ongoing, just A/B testing process. So those types of blending these different opportunities and these different types of tool chains, we think of it, and the thing that we always talk about in my team is just what can software or ML do to really be an accelerant for a very smart team. And so if you have talented people, I'd way rather have 10 extremely talented people who are multiplied by 10,
Right.
and with the power of really powerful and slick software tools. So that's really where we fall in line. And the other side of the coin is actually the piracy world. We do a significant amount of work in the piracy monetization side by claiming assets and taking over revenue streams. And it's been, we would not be able to do that nearly as efficiently without things like
Right.
fingerprint software, things like the ability to go out and scan large swaths of the internet for other, like our wholly owned materials that are being hosted in places where they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And so all those things all play together. And if anything, the small insight that I can additionally provide is, while we've seen this massive influx in viewership, we're also seeing a massive clamp down on ad spends. So there's actually more ad spending. And I think probably anyone that's on YouTube right now is being hit with 1 or 2 ads before a lot of the pre-roll ads before their videos are even being seen. But the actual unit value of those ads is actually quite, depressed right now.
That's right.
So more volume, lower value is just an action of the auction system that occurs on the back end. And obviously everyone kind of like pulling back a little bit on their ad spends. Obviously, we hope that doesn't last for too long, but we'll see. And
We
there's
would
definitely
hope AI would help there, but Eric, talk about point clouds in all this conversation around automated content and AI versus other things, because some people talk about that as a solution, but I'm sure there are other ways of doing this.
Well, the cloud discussion for me is really focused on edge computing, neck and neck, because 5G really solves a big problem with gathering video feeds, whether it's a sporting event or a news event. You might think of using Wi-Fi, for example, but that's unlicensed spectrum. 5G is licensed spectrum. It's much more reliable, and the technology behind 5G, especially millimeter wave 5G with beam steering, is phenomenally complicated, but it has potential for delivering, hundreds of megabits a second to gigabit per second feeds. And that's really needed to be able to have ubiquitous cameras on a court or a field or out in a news event to be able to get that real-time information. So real-time sports is a big money maker.
Right.
NFL Sunday Ticket is a huge part of our
Massive
entertainment business, and that's going to continue eventually. I think we're going to start to see some sports come back, like golf. Golf specifically can take advantage of 5G for ingesting video feeds. It's an ideal use case for that. But I think we're going to see that all over the place, and that's going to make more consumers generators of content as well. And then you have the location information. The phones have depth cameras in them as well, and life is really going to be wonderful from a content provider standpoint. The network is key, though, and if you want to do any kind of processing in real time of that video that needs to be then transformed into content for delivery to consumers, you need that edge computing as well to offload the device.
Yeah, and that's I mean, of course, you're already doing some localized 5G work for events, so I think that that, who knows, that might happen sooner rather than later. But it talks, you're getting into that discussion of edge computing and spatial computing that can really benefit from AI in ways that we haven't yet seen. So it's an interesting period for this, because of course about a year ago, maybe 14 months ago, there was a lot of skepticism about whether the streaming wars, OTT, which to me seemed ridiculous because it's just another way to slice the onion in terms of selling content. It's beautiful competition, but I think we're certainly going to see other ways to package and slice this up. Speaking of content, Thomas, I wanted you to talk a little bit, because of course this is a huge issue, particularly for international television distribution, is redaction and compliance. Talk about how VideoViews is able to solve some of those problems for both producers as well as distributors of content.
Sure. So one of the things that's, that comes out of the wash when we do this sort of dense multimodal labeling is that everything has been labeled. So if you want to be able to select a character and, let's say, mute their voice or mask their voice or their face, then that can be done very easily. It's especially useful for, as legislation is changing in Europe, in North America, about things like face recognition and requests or demanding that people sign off on their identity before material often gets broadcast. So that becomes an issue, for ensuring that people do remain anonymous when, let's say, for a news broadcast, things like that. And also, I mean, because we can then find content. So often, you might have one piece of video which has rights which are mixed up all together. And so very easily you can find content in the video, like let's say a series of clips which have certain rights that you do not have complete access to. And then if you want to share it with some other, let's say, station or whatever, then that can be removed, and then they can replace it with their own type of content. So that's something, and then within VideoViews, it's very, very simple to do this. You just select the content, you select the character, you select the person, or the type, or the text, or some keywords, and then it can all just be done automatically everywhere throughout the video with just a single click.
Yeah, this is a really great, automatic solution, and it's caused nightmares for a lot of people, particularly major television distributors. So we look forward to learning more about that. I think we're going to move to question time. If anyone out there in our audience has some questions, and I want to thank those of you who have suggested we use another platform. We're not going to trash the platform we're using. We're familiar with others. But we decided to use this one, so because you know it as well. But we will send you the videos that Thomas meant to show you with audio later. So any questions from folks? If not, then I'll ask just a sort of final thoughts here on what we should look for in the next year in AI and for video. And I'll start with you, Eric.
I think you should look for the fruition of the 5G network with edge computing and real-time communication with avatars, for example, just phone to phone in a collaboration context. We're already seeing kind of a need for that in the e-learning space, and there's kind of a bit of a gray area between education and entertainment, and that's also potentially a more efficient way to deliver content. So if we can kind of get the natural video in its proper place and the graphics in its proper place, and then provide interactivity for everybody, I think that we're going to start to see some true immersion of entertainment, immersive experiences actually coming to fruition. We haven't quite seen that yet, at least not on simple linear screens, but I think we're going to start to see that going forward.
That's great. And Bryce, your thoughts?
Yeah, for my world, it's going to be a lot of, I think, blending and the bleeding of the two lines between what has traditionally been the development world all the way through to the deployment and consumer space, with more assets living in more dynamic forms to be deployed to more people at any given time in different iterations at any given time. So things like your Avid or your Premiere or your master level production assets with full stems and full edits available, living in a much more dynamic state, and then being deployed and adapted and transformed on demand as the clients are queuing and requesting them. And obviously things like 5G will have a massive effect on that side of the business.
Right,
too.
so that's going to require some interoperability, obviously. We do have a question before I toss it to Thomas from Jay Yogeshwar, our Dr. J. What is the compute and graphic capability needed at the edge for real-time analysis of video with the VideoViews software? So that's a Thomas question. So Thomas?
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
So what's the graphic and compute capability that you need at the edge for real-time analysis of video with VideoViews? So it's a...
Well, I guess right now, VideoViews is completely cloud-based. I mean, you access it through a web browser. And so we have on our back end, we access GPUs that are used. And we actually put a great deal of effort to optimize the engineering of these different models to shift them to make them as efficient as we possibly can. So right now, they could be ported to the edge, but right now it's all living just on the cloud services. And I would say, in our case, we're not yet at real time, part of it is because, the way the platform works, it analyzes the video in its entirety to try and develop understanding of what's there. So a person must upload a video, and then it processes the whole thing, labels everything from the ground up, and then people then can interact with it. That aspect is in real time, the interactivity of it once everything, all the metadata has been established.
Yeah, great. I think that answered it. And Thomas, I'll ask you what you're going to look for in the next year in terms of video AI.
I guess sort of two things. One is, as people or companies like ourselves are looking at all these different components of video, synchronizing them together to try and really develop more true semantic understanding of what's going on in the video, and try and truly be able to determine, rather than sort of looking at individual clips or short segments, to really understand what is going on in the video, to really understand the context. And then I guess the other aspect is, as these tools become more distributed and people can interact with video more easily, I sort of wonder, if you give people the ability to remix content and play around with it, what sort of things will come out of that? If you can take, let's say, all of the Office content and allow people to completely remix all different episodes together, what can they generate as new content? And what can happen from that? So that's sort of something interesting.
Dynamic, contextualized content. That's well, we look forward to this. I'm sure a year from now we'll have we'll think we were in very early stages. I think, and as Eric said, let's hope that this pandemic is behind us in a year. But in the meantime, I want to thank Thomas and all his good work, and apologies for all those who didn't hear that great audio. We will send you those videos. We're not going to trash this platform, sorry. Wait, are there additional questions? Bryce told me. Hold on. I don't see them. So,
I've got a
oh, hold on. I'm bad. There we go. Question here. This is from P. Boson. How are you assessing emotion? It's a nonverbal, so it could be more than 50% of a communication channel, specifically tone or intonation. How do you train the model to assess nonverbal? So that's a Thomas question.
Well, nonverbal emotion is done through analysis of facial expressions. That's really what it comes down to. And so we look at the faces, we look at the action of the face, and look at the structure of the person's face, and then we can determine that non-verbally.
Yeah, good answer. Jean-Francois Nivar, our old buddy, has a question. What is the requested quality? Did you try AI labeling on legacy low quality content? So that's a really good question, particularly for producers in the room here. Is there some kind of minimum benchmark, or just talk about the video quality issue there, Thomas?
Well, I don't know. I mean, a lot of the quality of the video has not been all that great. So I can imagine that really bad video, that's very pixelated, would be a problem, but it's not something we really have come across too often. And part of it, we've actually have done some stuff with poor, let's say, lower quality video, because we have looked at things like, let's say, security footage. And so that often is fairly lower quality, and it works well there.
Yeah. So Pi Boson from IEEE is all over this. He's great. So one question he had is how poorly facial recognition is done today. Well, maybe an opinion. So we know implementation must overcome very intense privacy concerns, especially with Gen Z, probably the biggest potential consumers. You want to talk a little bit, Thomas, about facial recognition?
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's referring to about poor quality. I mean, we find that actually the state of the art now for facial recognition is pretty high. It works very fast and it works quite well.
And Lauren Coleman has a good question that I want to tag onto this, asking about different aspects of facial expressions, meaning the cultural ramifications or embedded cultural, let's say, artifacts in facial expressions. And actually a good question she asked here is this only for North American usage and content, which I assume it's not, but of course, but you know, want to give that one to you.
Sure. I mean, in terms of, you know, let's say emotions, you know, we're not looking, you know, there's what we found is that to be able to, you know, consistently predict emotion, we cannot look at things like, you know, all the different modalities of emotion. We're really just looking at a kind of valence of positive versus negative. And that's the sort of thing that we feel like we can accurately infer with, you know, a good degree of confidence. And so using that as a benchmark, we seem to find that it seems to work across different cultures, or that doesn't seem to be much of an issue. I imagine that if we wanted to look at, you know, let's say 10 different types of classes of emotions, then things might start to, you know, be a bit more challenging, but that's not something that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, okay. Raj has a great question. Seeking cast members' presence in a frame or scene can occur through natural language query. Do you also have NLU systems that facilitate this feature? Can user query by image content enable you to seek all scenes with the image in, say, a red shirt? Good questions.
Yeah, so I mean, the sort of general answer is yes, right now. And, you know, we're sort of building more and more types of queries that can be, you know, you can interact with the video, but I mean, the general answer is yes.
Yeah, another one along the same lines from Mustafa Adam. When looking at compliance check or video moderation, do you consider the scene context? I think we saw a little bit of that in your office demo, but.
Yeah, the scene context, I mean, is one of the things that can be looked at. I mean, people can generate queries based on scene context, and then those can be extracted as the person might wish. So that's not an issue.
Yep. So we, you know, we've gotten some really good questions from folks, and I'm really glad that so many folks stuck around. As I said again, I apologize for some of our glitches at the front, but I hope the scintillating commentary made up for that, and we will send you the videos. If you want to sign up for, again, it's an open free beta for VideoViews. Just go to envision.ai and you'll see a link there. And I think we're going to wrap it now. But once again, I want to thank Thomas Jelinek from Envision.ai, Dr. Eric Pettijohn from AT&T, and Bryce Hunter from Boat Rocker Media. I'm Chris Paff from Chris Paff Tech Media, LLC. Thank you once again. This has been a great discussion of the world of scaling deep learning for AI. And we will see you on the next one. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.